It'd be pretty funny if people were just watching us right now, waiting.
I have it up. It's not live.
Yeah, I'm not saying anything.
Oh, we're live now.
Oh, we are?
Apparently.
Okay. Well, let's get started. Welcome, everybody. Megan, Jess, thank you guys for being here. I know it's race week and you guys have got lots of resting to do, so we'll try and keep this expedient. So I'm going to be our MC today. Our current MC is having some technical difficulties, so I will be kind of both part of the panel and MCing the panel. I'm Ty, for those who don't know me. I'm the founder and head coach at Chaski Endurance Collective, and I'm also one of our athletes running Leadville 100 on Saturday, this coming Saturday. So super excited to talk about training for Leadville, my experience last year, and then also hear about Megan's training for her first 100, spoiler alert, and also Coach Jess Woods from New York City, our sea-level flatlander, yeah, so we're all coming from, I think, very different places for this race, and I think that's what's going to make this really interesting. And to give a little bit of background in terms of what Chaski is, so we are a collective of coaches and athletes who our main goal is to empower athletes and foster community. Hopefully this is a little bit of both of those. We really want to empower everyone out there to tackle whatever they're going after, whether it's a 100-mile trail race or your first 5K. Hopefully this will give you a little bit of inspiration and some information to get started. And, obviously the community part as well. We really want this to be interactive. So if you're watching on YouTube, Facebook, whatever, we want you guys to throw some questions in and we'll try to get to those at the end as well. So first things first, I would love to start with Megan. Megan, you're our 100-mile newbie here. So tell us about your training this summer. You've done a lot of trail races, but how have things gone and what have you done differently for this build up for your 100-mile race versus training for shorter trail races?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely maybe not the smartest first 100. I admit that. Leadville's a tough 100, so feel a little in over my head, but really excited about it. I'd say this summer overall, I did much higher volume in general than normal. Not necessarily just miles, but thinking about how I could get up to altitude a lot more. Spent a lot of weekends up in Leadville or in that area, living out in Golden, Lakewood area of Colorado. I'm only, 90 minutes from there. So getting out there as much as possible. I also signed myself up for a few training races. And of course, Jess, both our dogs, now my dog is trying to be a part of this. But yeah, signed myself up for the Leadville Marathon, thinking that would be pretty runnable, high altitude. And then a couple other races. So the San Juans, there's a Silverton Marathon, and I signed up for that, which was a lot more runnable, alongside the Kendall Mountain Run, which was like the next day. So just tried to stack up some big weekends, and then finally ended with Never Summer 60K just a couple weeks ago. And that was my longest run leading into this race. So I signed up for races that, I knew would be tough going into them, because I wasn't going to taper off or anything, but they would be good training races and just get me out there like at aid stations, practicing fueling and hydration and all of that.
Awesome. And tell us a little bit, just kind of like more about your background. I kind of skipped the introduction. So like you have, I know you've raced a lot on trails, but like give our listeners a little bit just of a background of like, who is Megan Flanagan as a runner and a coach?
Yeah, so I was a collegiate athlete. I did steeplechase and cross country, so I had a strong base there. I was never really speed focused as much. I'd say maybe more so post college, but really jumped right into road marathons to obstacle course races, and then slowly dipped my toe into the trail waters. And I would say, I think my first ultra was a 50K at the end of 2019, right before COVID hit, and then races were called off. So I just did a lot of like longer stuff, outside of racing. and then kind of tried my hand at a 50 miler last year, Mary's Peak out in Oregon. And I mean, it was high altitude for Oregon, right? It was a lot of vert, probably 10,000 feet of climbing. So I knew I liked that, but I had never been to like really high altitudes. And so moving to Colorado last summer, I got really interested in races like Leadville or Run Rabbit and really wanted to pursue this as my first one.
Awesome. Yes, I'm going to turn to you now. So I guess let's start with the same question. Tell us a little bit about your running background, kind of how you got into the sport, and then maybe why you're here at Leadville. And yeah, let's start with that.
I'm going to kick it off with, I think we might be talking to ourselves right now. So maybe I will just keep going in case it's somewhere else, but it's definitely not.
It's working on YouTube. I think the Instagram connection is not working, but it's on our YouTube channel.
All right. Well, I am Jess Woods, Coach Jess. I am obviously a Chaski Endurance Collective coach. I'm also a Nike running coach in New York City and coach for Brooklyn Track Club and Brooklyn Trail Club as well. I don't remember all the questions, but why Leadville is an interesting question because I vowed to never do Leadville. I got into the lottery ages ago and decided against it because I thought that there was not a great way to be set up for success living in New York City training for Leadville. And I was just super intimidated by it. I saw plenty of colleagues much stronger than me not be able to complete it. So I was completely, just totally too nervous to give it a go that year. And then the opportunity kind of presented itself this year through Lifetime Fitness. And I just thought it was a sign. I'm big into it's a sign. This is the new challenge this year. So I'm big into trying new and different challenges, not I know I've done Javelina 100 before, but kind of fell out of love with the sport after doing that race so many times. So the point of this race is to try a new challenge, the new challenge being actually heading to the mountains and not hiding from them.
Yeah, so for those of you who don't know, Jess and I met because she ran the Speed Project Solo, which is a 300+ mile run from Los Angeles to Las Vegas. She was the first woman ever to complete that. So first of all, huge props for that. But with that experience, that's super flat by comparison and at sea level essentially. So, you mentioned this, you're in New York City, you're on the East Coast, you're at sea level. What did you do differently to prepare for a race that is at altitude and in the mountains?
Well, first of all, I think everyone downplays Javelina a little bit. And it still has a little over 9,000 feet of elevation, okay? It does. Don't look at me like that, Tyler. It does.
I can't say anything.
But it is most definitely not at altitude. So I was not able to train at altitude. So what we did was just try and simulate the various parts of the races. I'm not a big high mileage person, so we basically just broke down the course chunk by chunk and here, put on this weighted vest and climb up a treadmill for 2,500 feet. So you do the best with what you've got, and above and beyond treadmill power hiking, we do have trails here on the East Coast. Nothing compared to Leadville, very aware. But we did things basically just learning how to suffer, right? So it might not be altitude, but just practicing suffering, whether that meant running in the middle of the day, whether it meant running on an overnight, running in the humidity, just always practicing suffering. So not necessarily altitude, but hopefully just trying to outsuffer everyone long enough to finish.
I mean, that sounds like a good strategy. And they say humidity is poor man's altitude. So there you go. You've got plenty of that in the East Coast in August. Yep. Awesome. Okay. So a couple of questions that I think we put together to kind of go around as the three of us. Some of these questions came from listeners. Some of them I put together ahead of time. But first one, and maybe we can just go in the order we just went. So Megan, you go first, and then Jess, and then I'll answer. What was the longest run you did in training, longest single run? And that could be in time or in miles, whatever you prefer. And then what was your peak weekly mileage?
Yeah, so mine was the Never Summer 60K. I was not super proud of my time. Took me somewhere almost 9 hours. So it was a long day out there. A lot of climbing, a lot of off trail. Yeah, that's a gnarly course. So I feel like that was all I needed. Other than the 60K though, which was I guess 38 miles roughly. I didn't do anything over like a marathon or even like 20, 22 miles on, any given weekend. The other piece of that question, so 86 miles was my longest run per week. I had an 86 and an 82 mile week. Some of those were spent hiking, like a little bit of hiking, running 14ers and such. I was definitely tired by those weeks. And my longest run, I think it's important, for anyone that's like looking to do 100, that you don't have to run the distance before the race, or you don't have to do 100-mile weeks all the time. Like I, was kind of intimidated by that factor. Even hitting 86, I was surprised that I did that, because coming off of what I normally can do, when I get past 60 or 65 miles a week in like a marathon block, I feel pretty awful. So I was surprised with how good I felt in this training cycle hitting those high miles. And I think a lot of that comes down to like allowing yourself to hike and to, cover like different terrain than just road running.
And I would actually kind of tack on to this question. I don't know if you guys track this, but I'm curious what your total weekly vert was if you track that. That's like, for those who don't know, vert is usually referred to as like your elevation gain. So it's not up and down, it's just up.
I think mine was like 17 or 18,000. So somewhere in there.
For context, I think Leadville has about 15,000 total feet of climbing. Yeah. Jess, what about you? Longest run, peak mileage, and vert?
It definitely wasn't that much elevation. I was proud of myself when we could get a 4,000 foot weekend in, which sometimes required like what a lot of people do on the East Coast. We have something called Mount Beacon, which is basically like a 1,500 foot climb. And so people will go out and do repeats of Mount Beacon. But yeah, nothing close to 15,000, 17,000 feet. Longest run was in like the 6, 7, 8 hour range. Definitely in hours, not miles. So this training was very different. It was more miles and thousands of feet as the goal versus, mileage. So that's why I signed up to do this. It was going to be very different training from last year. Weekly mileage, I have no idea. I took myself off of Strava halfway through because it just, and it's been lovely ever since. I'm sure there was a big week in there somewhere when I like procrastinated my long run until Monday and then did another one on Sunday. So I'm sure there was a long one in there somewhere, but, yes, I'm very happily off of tracking that now.
Nice. Awesome. Yeah, I think for me, so longest run distance wise was I did 100K, or yeah, exactly 100K back in June on the Leadville course right before the marathon. That was kind of a big like logistical test run for the race. I had my buddy John Baston, who's going to be crewing me out there supporting. That was awesome. And we learned a lot about that and just like what I needed, what he needed, what paces kind of made sense. And then I think longest time, that was not the longest time run actually. Longest time runs, I think I probably had 2 days where I did over 10 hours. but it was like a lot of hiking, like really high stuff. One was when we did the Inca Trail with the Chaski Peru trip. That was like a 10.5 hour day. And then the other, I did a big loop in Peru that was, I think it was only about 50K, but it took about 10 hours, really high with a lot of climbing. So some long days for sure. And then mileage, I also got a Strava like Jess, which I really liked. I kind of liked the feeling of not having people looking over my shoulder with my training. I honestly don't know. I didn't really look at 7-day cycles that much. So I would guess it was in the 150 miles range. And Vert was probably 35,000-ish at peak with that. So that's pretty similar to what I did last summer and what I've done for other ultras and felt really good. But, you know, I'm a high mileage guy, so I like that stuff.
Clearly. Yeah.
Okay, here's a question for everybody again. Megan, we'll start with you. What was one workout, or it could just be a training day, that gave you the most confidence coming into the race?
Yeah, when you said workout in that question, I'm like, workout? I don't think I did enough of those. I almost let speed and, like running 26.2 fall to the wayside. So this probably goes along with lesson learned. We're going to get there. But one of the many lessons learned was like, I can't just let running go out the window. I was doing a lot of running, hiking combination. And then it really kind of hit me as like a lesson learned during the Silverton Alpine Marathon that, like, oh shoot, I probably should be able to run, like a long distance still and not let that go. So I'd probably say, yeah, there's nothing specific. I guess in like week to week workouts though, I did notice improvements on some of the courses I run. So like just from my house or, my local trail here, like Green Mountain, I noticed I was, and maybe this is a Strava thing, but I was like hitting segments faster in workouts and I could compare, like I was hitting some PRs. So that was like good to see that I was still improving in that way, even for a, 10-mile workout, and hoping that transfers over to like overall fitness going into this race.
Yeah, that's the part about Strava that I actually really like. Like, I really like segments, but mostly for myself, because I can see like I make a lot of private segments where it's like just the runs that I do. Like when I was in Peru, it's like no one else runs there on these trails. So it's like I would have like 20 segments on these routes, but it's all just like for me to be able to see like, oh, I was really tired today. That climb was really slow. Or like, oh, I feel really like that climb felt easy, but it was quicker. Like that's great. So that's the part of Strava that I actually really like, is the ability to set that up and kind of see for yourself. Yeah. Yes. What about you?
I have a very specific turning point where we finally had a good run. So it definitely, and then it came in the 11th hour. We were running out of time. So I was doing a lot of these runs solo, and I knew that we had to practice the overnight portion, and knew that would have been very dumb to do alone. And so finally asked for some help and had two friends come out and help with that overnight run. And it turned out to be, the dumber the better. It turned out to be a lot of fun. And from then on out was doing training runs with Gretchen, with groups of people, and it was onward and upward from there.
Awesome. I guess I have to answer this one too. I like being the interviewer. I think for me, the workout or the day maybe that I will look to the most was actually the Leadville Marathon. So I ran that same race that Megan did. That was back in June. And it was a really important day because I forced myself to be extremely patient. And I have a tendency for not doing that. And I think that was honestly like, it was a really, really, like, I went to that race with very little expectation. And in the end, I felt like I performed really well. And that was mostly because I ran really patiently. And I didn't let myself get psyched out because someone had kind of taken off at the front and a gap had formed. And I knew, okay, I'm just going to be patient. I'm going to run my own race. And this guy's going to come back to me. And I think that's the big day that I'm going to look to on Saturday for kind of inspiration, is, not getting freaked out if you're not in first for the whole race. It's like, who's in first at the end? That's all that matters. Okay, let's turn to, a lot of people have questions about nutrition for 100-mile races. So Megan, can you tell us about your plan for nutrition and hydration on race day?
Yeah, so I guess I'll start by saying I've always had a pretty strong stomach, I feel like. And I don't know, like I can get, GI stuff and all that, but like I've never gotten sick. Knock on wood, that might happen this weekend. I'm just accepting that. Like anything could go wrong. So fueling, I think, is like a huge component to any ultra, especially one that's overnight like this. I plan to have a lot of solid foods. I just take those in better. Of course, like plenty of water, electrolytes. Yeah, I mean, I did some calculating and I think everyone's different, like on specifics per hour, but I have kind of goals or benchmarks to hit, like 200 to 300 or more per hour. Trying to really front load nutrition has worked well for me. So eating more in the first, 8 hours of the race or first half of that race, to really hopefully have that translate if something goes awry or if I start to feel sick, like having lots of different options for food. Even chicken broth. I mean, things that I've never really had in other races, I'm going to, include in this race and have my crew have a lot of different variety for foods. And, I think in 100 too, at least for me, taking in a lot more than just gels is essential. So like real foods, but really curious to hear what you all think and what your nutrition plan is.
No, it sounds like a good plan. Having a lot of things is a good idea. And if you have a strong stomach, that's clutch. All right, Jess.
I was going to have you go next so people can hear what the polar opposite answer is whenever I go.
Okay, sure. I'll go next. So my plan is my default is to use sports drink for a lot of my calories. So I find that for me, a race that's 15, 16 hours, I can get away with more just gels and sports drink versus taking a lot of solid food. That said, I definitely have solid food planned in alongside that. Last year and in some other runs, I've tried to just do 100% sports drink. And especially even without gels, I felt just like my stomach didn't, like I also have a pretty good stomach, I think, like Megan said, but I think just having something that's not liquid, having solid food is really important, something savory. So like I've literally told my crew, like I want to have a pizza at Twin Lakes and like, stuff like that. Like Ritz crackers have worked really well for me in training as like a salty thing that's easy to get down. So just things like that to snack on and kind of supplement, but really the majority would be a high electrolyte, high carbohydrate drink. And then kind of supplementing with basically like whatever I crave. So I'm going to try and get that 300 calories an hour from the sports drink. And then basically anything beyond that is really whatever I'm craving. So, all right, Jess, now it's your turn.
I'm so proud of you for wanting to eat more this year.
I know.
I would be so happy if I saw you eating a pizza. That would make me very happy.
I'm gonna eat a pizza. I literally went the day I got to Colorado. I got like the filthiest piece of gas station pizza I could find on the way here, and then went to Hope Pass, ran Hope Pass, and like ate a piece of pizza as I was running out of the parking lot to like see how it would feel. Really fine.
Great.
So. Yep.
Well. Yeah, so I don't know what it's like to finish 100 miles in 14, 15, 16 hours, more of the chasing the cutoff time group. So definitely in need of lots of food, lots of calories, since we'll be out there for a long time. In my pack, I carry baby food, like the little...
I got some of that actually. It's cheap spring energy.
Wait, is it? Really?
It's mashed up fruit.
It sounds gross, but maybe it's not.
It's like bananas and fruit just smashed up in a pouch that you can have. It says it's good for ages 3 months and up, so it should work.
That's all of us.
So it's baby food. It's like those fruit bars from Trader Joe's and meat and cheese sticks, basically like whatever you can find at a gas station rest stop. That will stay preserved in your pack for a very long time and not go bad. And then same thing with the electrolyte carbohydrate mix. It says it has 350 calories in it. So I love not sponsored. I love the Science and Sport beta fuel. It says it has a bunch of calories in it, and it's what a lot of cyclists take on super long rides so that they don't poop their pants. And so I figured if it works for them, then hopefully it works for endurance runners too.
Sounds good. Cool. Okay, we'll do two more. What is one thing you've learned during this build-up? Megan, I feel like you must have learned a lot. It's your first 100 build-up.
I guess. I feel like I'm going to learn a lot more out there, though. I feel like there's just less.
So you're definitely going to learn a lot on Saturday, no matter what happens.
So I'm just waiting. I know I'm going to learn. What would I say? Well, I said leg speed's still important. I mean, I have a tendency to just kind of throw speed work out the window since it's 100. Like, that's what I'd love to do, but I did keep at least one speed workout a week or like tempo run. I think that's still important. Time at altitude, I mean, it's made a huge difference for me this summer. I've noticed I've gotten substantially, and I know Jess, like, people aren't always able to, but right, I Jess. Mean, that was good for me. It was a confidence booster. What else? Oh, make sure like you're not neglecting strength, nutrition, and mindset. I mean, like, I think those components are so crucial, and some people in 100, like, it's easy for me to just get caught up in my volume and what I'm doing each week, but making sure that I am practicing fueling, practicing like when things get hard, because they will get hard, right? It's not like an if things go wrong, it's when they go wrong, what will you do? And so I'm just trying to have a better plan in that case. And, you know, it's easy to also start to forget about strength training, but then like little niggles would pop up. So just taking care of those smaller things, I think, was kind of a crucial component and lesson for me to come back to throughout the training cycle.
Excellent. Jess, something you've learned?
Yeah, I kind of alluded to it earlier with that turning point running with friends. Yeah, this training cycle was definitely more of an ups and downs roller coaster than in the past, and it maybe had a lot more downs than ups. And so I was finding myself just going out on a lot of solo runs because I didn't want people to see me like that. I didn't want, people to see like lack of fitness or fatigue or anything. So I was just doing a lot of it on my own, and that definitely wasn't making it any better. And so, and we all know these things, right? Like we're all coaches here, and we tell everyone not to suffer in silence and not to be afraid to ask for help. And I knew better, but I still didn't do it and didn't really ask for help until the 11th hour. And of course, things got better from there. So
yeah, that happens.
Yeah, I don't know if it's like a lesson learned because we knew it, but I guess
relearned maybe.
Definitely a lesson reminded. Yeah.
There you go. I like that. For me, I think a big thing I kept coming back to is just the idea that like comparison is kind of the thief of joy, is the old truism. And again, it's something that like I knew, just like Jess was saying, but had to kind of be reminded of both with like, turning my Strava off and even just like comparing to myself. Like this was an interesting thing because I was like training for the same race in the same location. Like I was running on the same routes, and there were a lot of runs where I would look back at what I did the year before and be like, oh man, yeah, last year I did that climb a minute faster. Like what's wrong with me? And it's like, there's just like your body goes through fluctuations. There are days where you're going to feel really good, and there are days where you're going to feel tired. And like even comparing yourself on the same exact run, a year apart, like you're going to have days where like there were days where this summer's Tyler crushed last summer's Tyler and vice versa. So like, I think it's important to remind yourself, like, comparing yourself to others is one thing. Comparing yourself to yourself can also be just as problematic, like especially if you're in a situation where you're kind of trying to do the same thing again. And I think the bigger thing is like just zoom out and see like, okay, like how is everything going? Like what's the overall trend? Look at the workouts, the days, the races that really matter, and see, okay, are those moving in the right direction? And so that was the thing that like when I kind of stopped looking at it on such a granular level and zoomed out and said, oh my gosh, yeah, actually like I'm running more, I'm doing more, I'm doing my important days faster. Like, this is all good. I'm recovering better. My body feels healthier. Like, all these things are actually super positive, and just kind of like let go of the day-to-day minutia. That was really good for me. Last question here is, and maybe you guys don't have this, you don't have to think about it, but what's a single word or a short phrase? I'm hesitant to use the word mantra because it sounds cheesy, but something to, yeah, I know, Jess, right? Something that you'll be trying to remember and kind of bring back on Saturday. Megan, you want to go?
Yeah, I have a couple. I mean, some of them are nothing magical, right? I mean, just keep moving, like telling myself it doesn't matter if, you know, again, I'm going for cutoff time ultimately. I mean, I have certain goals set and like would love to hit X number of hours, but I really, when people ask about my goal, it's like just to go out there and have a good time and like enjoy the experience and the process. So kind of reminding myself of why I'm out there and not getting too caught up in like being at a certain time, and reminding myself that anything will pass. So like if there's okay, I'm not trying to take that to hope pass, but like hope pass will pass, will pass, whatever. You know, if something goes wrong and your stomach hurts, like it's going to pass, wait an hour or two. So just reminding myself to be patient, right? And knowing that it will pass eventually and I'll get through it. And yeah, and like I said, enjoying I think Jess spoke really highly, or like you spoke well to community, and that's what it's all about out there. And I know a lot of athletes out there, a lot of crew, and I'm just really grateful for the chance to be out there running. So I'm gonna remind myself of that as well.
Excellent. Ms. Woods?
Yeah, not so much a mantra, but maybe more of a coping mechanism.
I like that.
Yeah, my
coping phrase.
Coping mechanism mindset. You know, I feel like ultra marathons are all about how long can you play mind games with yourself. So my mind game with myself is this entire training cycle was making hard things harder. And so by the time that we get to the race, hopefully, the race is now the good part, right? Like, and so I always, if something gets dark and twisty during the race, I just always try and think back to something harder that I've already been through. I try and just like downplay the crisis at hand, and and it doesn't even have to be running related, right? It could be like, oh, when you were, you know, in isolation with COVID for 9 days, like you just think about something harder that you've been through. And it's like, if you've done that, like you can climb this 4,000 foot climb. It's nothing.
Well said. I like that. Very true. My little phrase, I pulling from Hamilton, and is wait for it. I think that pretty much sums up everything that I want to do on Saturday, is just in every sense of the word, in the macro sense of like the whole race, like trying to wait as long as possible. And even just kind of thinking about trying to like not think too far ahead in the race. I think, I can't remember, I think Megan was talking about kind of like breaking things up into chunks. And that's something that I've always tried to do, whether it's a 1 mile race or a 100-mile race, is never think about how much you have left. Just think about, okay, I'm in this chunk and this is a course that I know really well at this point. And I feel like I can break that down into very manageable chunks. You know, even like last year when I was having a bad day, it was never like, oh my gosh, I have 30 miles to go. It was like, okay, I need to get to the top of this climb, and then I need to get down, and then I need to get to that road crossing, and et cetera, et cetera. So I think just that idea of waiting for whatever is to come, not worrying about it, but just being patient. Again, that's a word that we keep coming back to. And I think us as coaches, like, especially in long races, it's a word that I use all the time with my athletes and with myself. And it's one of those things where, like, if I were coaching, I could be a coach to myself, like, oh man, that'd be great. Because like, if I could actually listen to my advice, but I think this time I feel like I'm actually ready to do that. So yeah, wait for it. That's it. That's all the questions that I had, and we're just at about 30 minutes. So perfect timing. Megan, Jess, any parting words you guys want to share, sign off with here before we wrap up?
No parting words. We're gonna end with like this image, maybe.
That's a good one.
And
Be a goldfish. That should have been our mantra. How is that not it? Be a goldfish.
I don't want to be a goldfish though, because I want to remember all the tough shit that I went through. That's the whole point.
True.
So, what is the opposite? Is it an elephant? Oh God, why am I doing this live? Are they the ones with the good memory?
I don't know. The elephants are good.
So maybe.
Like, some people have good memories.
No, my parting words is, we didn't talk anything about the crew team coming along with each and every one of us. So just shout out to not just you and all the athletes running, but it takes a lot of patience and love to support these things. So shout out to my crew, your crew, all the crews coming out as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, this is my first race with the crew and super, super grateful.
Nice.
So it's hard to accept that help too sometimes, but it's like, we're going to need it. So
yeah, that was my experience last year. And that'll be my like parting advice for you, Megan. It's like, just like, don't worry about being a you know what. Like if you're like in a bad place and you're just like, just shut up and give me a sandwich. Like, it's okay. They will still love you. You can apologize afterwards. Just like say what you need and they will still love you and forgive you for it. Like, be as nice as you can while you still feel good, because at some point you're going to feel really bad and you're just going to be like a real jerk to your crew and you're going to feel bad about it, but it's okay. It happens. Like, just like prepare yourself for that. Yeah. No, I think that's a great note to wrap up on. Like, I mean, we've all touched on community. I think like ultra running and trail running, especially, it's like the community part is so huge. Like whether it's people that come out to crew or volunteers at the race, or just like people that you see at races all the time. Like that's something that I know we all missed during COVID and, or during the lockdowns of COVID. And yeah, I'm super grateful to my crew and all the other athletes I know out here who I'll be able to see out on the course and stuff like that. And yeah, just huge shout outs to everybody. And I guess I will wrap up by just saying best of luck to all of our runners, 3 of us, and of course everybody else running. If you're watching and running, give us a holler on Saturday if you see us. It's an out and back course, which is cool because it means you pretty much see everybody in the race at some point. You can high five. And yeah, stay tuned. We will be posting updates during race day about all 3 of us. So Megan, Jess, thank you guys so much for your time. Jess, safe travels from the East Coast. Megan, you've got a much easier trip, and I will see you guys at some point later this week.
all right. Thank you.
See you soon.
All right.
Yeah.
Thanks, everybody. Have a good one. Bye.